Clive, how are you? Rosmal! The boys are out there. I'm just for tootsing around. I got some things I'd like to share. We'll wait a little bit, see if anybody else joins us. I made this terrible loop, but I figured it would demonstrate the guide tone line thing and kind of fluctuates in tempo. I didn't do it with a click track or anything. I just quickly did it before I went live. And I did that, and I also did one with just a quick 2/5 to talk about guide tone lines with that. So let's wait what time is it now on here? 4:10. We'll give it another, I guess, 2 minutes, and then we'll go. Do I sound okay out there? I didn't do a sound check or anything. Hello from Texas. Hey. Sounds good to you. Hey, one of my old Berkeleyites out there. How are you, Andrea? Not too loud? Can you say ow? All right, let's go for it. Enough with this loop. It's driving me nuts playing a loop. Thank you all for showing up. I'm happy to pass this on to you all. Anybody that went to Berkeley understands guide tone lines, but I'm going to reiterate a little bit about them. They are mostly the thirds and sevenths of chords. They seem to move in half-step motion. And we're going to just, for the time being, address them based on a blues. That seems to be the easiest. Say a little about the PRS. You know, I'll get to that. I will. Anyway, the guide tone lines for a blues are very cool. They're very easy actually. If you pick a blues in B flat and you take the third and the seventh, and I'm going to put this on the screen for you because I did this. Let me just move off of here. Okay, there's the blues. Up, I did it in G. Let's make that smaller. You should see it soon. Hey, Jeffrey. Okay, there it is. It'll move to the side in a second. I'll get this technology thing going. Okay, I actually wrote it out. Blues in G. Guide tone lines in G. Actually, Berkeley first semester. If you notice in the key of G, since let's transpose from the B flat. I was playing blues in B flat before. In the key of G, we have the flat 7 and the third. Now I made this progression very simple. I didn't put any 2/5s in it. I didn't even put going back to the 4 chord. So it's 4 bars of G, 4 bars of C. It goes back to G7. I actually didn't label that there. There should be a G7 on the second. Let's see if it's there. No, I must have erased it. There's a G7 on the 6th bar. So put that in there. You can see it goes back to B natural. And then there's D7, the 5 chord, and back to 1. And then I put the 5 chord in at the end. But here's what the guide tone lines sound like and look like. On G7, we have for 4 bars. And it just goes down a half step. Back up. Here's the 5 chord. Back to the 1 chord. And back to the 5 chord, bringing us back to the top. Okay? They kind of help you outline the changes without sounding like you're chasing the changes. What I mean by chasing the changes is starting everything on the root, which makes you sound like a bass player. So I'm going to just simply use the guide tone line, and I'll blow over the changes of a blues and G. Just making primary use of just the guide tone line. Here we go. Anyway, I danced around the guide tone lines. I target guide tone lines. My ear targets guide tone lines. I initially fed them to my ear, decades ago, and I nail them just subconsciously now. It doesn't seem like I speak on the chord unless I hear a third, I hear a B natural somewhere on the G7, and I hear a B flat somewhere on the 4 chord or C7, and I hear an F sharp. And the cool thing about it is when you start to superimpose other changes. For instance, I think you caught me play over a D flat 7 chord just because my ear sent me there. But if you notice, I targeted the B in there, and then I moved it to the D flat 7. I think I did something like there's the B natural, and then here's 5 to back to 1. Anyway, I get lost in all that stuff. I have fun with it. So that's what's going on with the guide tone lines in the blues. Again, it moves in stepwise motion. So you're sitting here, and that's the 1 chord, and you hear it going to the 4 chord. Here comes the 4 chord. Back to 1, and to go to the 5 is just a half step higher, same tritone. And that's the essence of the guide tone line for the blues. Now, last week we spoke about the turning the minor pentatonic scale into a dominant pentatonic scale. So here's what I did this week for everyone. Let's put this on the screen somehow. And I'm going to lose the blues. Putting this over here. Now, you'll see it pop up in a second. There's about a 10-second delay. It'll move over. So what I did in G, since we're talking in G, is I moved things over. And you can see I showed the one note that changed to make it a dominant, in this case, G minor going to C7, C7 dominant. And here's what that looks like. Here's where we're starting, and here's where we wind up. We move that to here. Okay, so now if you utilize these, and I gave you the 5 fingerings, and once you marry them together, you are now looking at the whole fingerboard, and it's diagonal. So, can't see my hands. You know what? I'm going to do something here. Hopefully that does it, Jeff. We'll get this going. Come on, move. There we go. Okay, so it's in the corner. All right, again, here's what I was demonstrating that Jeff pointed out. You can't see my hands. Here's what we talked about with the G minor pentatonic scale. And this is the C7 dominant pentatonic, or G minor 6. Moving this note to here, which is the guide tone line, right? In a 2-5. All right? And what we've done is we moved that over. So here is your dominant pentatonic, C dominant pentatonic, which is, okay, here's what it looks like across the board. All right, that's that one. Here's the second fingering. Here's the third fingering. Fourth fingering. And fifth fingering. Okay? Now, when I play the blues again in G, and I'll do it slower, you will see me, I'll utilize only those notes. No chromaticisms. I'll just use those notes. So here we go. 1, 2, da, sorry, use the chromatic note. I'm just targeting those notes in that scale. So anyway, those are the fingerings. Again, once you marry them, and you got this, you got them all over the fingerboard. And once you add chromaticism, it's you got all of it. And that's a good start before using substitutions. So that's the stuff I wanted to turn everybody on to today, guide tone lines. Now, if you look back on that sheet of guide tone lines, it shows the guide tone lines for a 2-5, which we just briefly discussed when I showed you the minor 6. And I'm going to put that back up again. Here's the minor 6. Cover that one up. If you look below, it'll click up there in a second. There it is. I'll move it out of the way. Now, if you look at the lower part of that, I gave you the guide tone lines to a 2-5, which is again the thirds and the sevenths. So in that case, it's A minor 7, D7. So here it is. And that's going A minor 7, D7. All right, so that's the guide tone lines for 2-5. So here's just a quick story. When I was a kid and I learned one of my first Duke Ellington tunes, which was Satin Doll. And I learned it like everybody else did. Very hokey. But if you understand how guide tone lines work, and you do guide tone lines work, and you turn everything into 3-note voicings, here's what I came up with that sounds a whole lot slicker, a whole lot more pianistic. Same little chord progression. A lot hipper instead of big clunky chords. Anyway, that's guide tone lines for 2-5. Now, here's something that Jeff and I spoke about in the past. When I analyzed Charlie Parker and George Benson and people like that, they pretty much marry the 2-chord and the 5-chord as one sound, and it is. It's a dominant sound. At Berkeley, we called it a subdominant to dominant, but it's all a dominant sound. If you look at Charlie Parker, the chord's G minor 7, he's playing C7, blowing over C7, or targeting the notes of C7 or G minor 6. If the chord's G minor, he's targeting, if the chord's C7, he's targeting, and he's playing 2-5 over it. So, so you can marry the 2 and the 5 and play it in an application of either being G minor or being C7, or learn how to use substitutions for them, 5/5 subs and other subs and it's one sound. So, so hopefully getting that under your fingers, a la Pat Martino or George. That to me is either this or it's this. I don't decipher. I don't do this. I mean, it might be in there. It might be in there, but I'm not running an arpeggio most of the time going. That sounds pretty old school to me. So, any questions about any of these things? I'll talk about my PRS at some point for any questions? Any questions about what I just threw out there? All right. I'm just going to elaborate a little bit here on things that have been asked of me regarding the evolving blues progressions. If you take a look at this sheet that I printed out, it shows a few evolutions of the blues. Since we're basing everything on the blues and guide tone lines and playing over the changes of the blues. So in the beginning, you see the progression that I showed you before with the guide tone lines, which is basically just a 1 to a 4 chord, back to 1 to 5 to 1. Now, if you look at number 2 shows going to the 4 chord on the second bar, then going 1, 5, 1, and then going to 4, and then going to 1, then going to 5 to 4 to 1. It's important for me to mention this. There's a diatonic system, okay, and then there's a constant structure system. Now the blues started where you could have said 1, 4, 5 if they were triads, and it would have come from the key of G, 1 chord, 4 chord, 5 chord. But because of the additional melodic notes or notes of melody that originated in field hollers, and I think I discussed that last time. Field hollers were, the people picking cotton would sing their melodies, and they would use melodic notes like a flat 5 and a flat 3 and a flat 7, and those became notes, strong notes of their melodies. After a while, our ear adapted that. It was not very adapted by people from Europe. Okay, that was not a sound they were used to hearing. Look, first time I remember hearing a dominant 7 sharp 9, it was, it was pretty funky. But after a while, what happens is what once becomes dissonance becomes eventually develops into being consonance. It becomes sweet to our ear. Now, a dominant 7 sharp 9 is an awesome chord. We love it. And flat 3 or sharp 9 on a major triad is commonplace. Okay, so what happened was in the blues, flat 7 and flat 3s became strong melodic tones. So in the blues, we started adopting a flat 7 on every chord. So a 1 chord became a 1/7. A 4 chord became a 4/7. A 5 chord became a 5/7. And that being said, it now morphed into what's called a constant structure song, meaning the primary chords that are targeted are the same quality chord, all dominant chords. There are a lot of songs that are that. Going back to Herbie Hancock's Maiden's Voyage, that was a constant structure song. It was all sus4 chords. Okay, so that's a constant structure song. Now, in the blues, what happens is you have a constant structure song, and the bass line pretty well is what keeps it coherent, because you got the 5/1 motion, 1 to 4, that's what ties it together. Not so much the structures above or the notes you choose to solo with melodically. Now, as you look at this sheet, what has happened as it progressed on is musicians found ways to transport themselves from the 1 to the 4, the 1 to the 5, back to the 1, and they took from the diatonic system, okay, which was a very European influence thing. So our music is primarily Afro-American music with its melodies and its rhythms, and interspersed with European harmonies. So if you look at the third one down, okay, here I'll play you the second one first. Here it goes. Pretty commonplace. We've all done it. It's pretty benign. Now, as you look at the third one, we start utilizing some other ways to finally transport ourselves to the strong points of a blues. So I use a 4/7 chord, then I use a flat 7/7, which is really another way of saying 5, back to the G7. Then I go, here comes from the Western diatonic harmony, 2/5 to 4. But the 4 is not a 4 major 7 chord, it's a constant structure C7 chord. Okay, so it's a 4/7. Then there's a sharp 4 diminished 7, which is nothing more than a C7 flat 9. Okay, that's all it is. Okay, and then back to the G7. Then we use the diatonic thing, and we walk up, and we do 2/5 to 2, and 2 and 5 are married together. Okay, we lose the 4 chord, and back to 1, and then 2/5 back to the top. So you can see how now we marry a bunch more of the diatonic system to target our important chords of a blues. So here is number 3. And that's number 3. So now I'm targeting those. Now, keep in mind that you add these harmonies as an improviser, you blow over those. Even if the band doesn't. Even if the band goes back to playing number 1, you can still play over the changes of number 3, because it's where you target, you land where you land in the strong bars of the blues. Now, I'm going to flip another one up here. Okay, so now I have one more. I mean, this could go on forever. I can come up with a million blues progressions, and so can anybody else. So I took it another step further. So now if you take a look at number 4, I have the 1-7, then to the 4, then to the 4 minor, and it's 5-7, the flat 7, or the flat 7, or you can call it the flat 3 of that, into back to 1, all right, to 2-5 of 4, to that sharp 4 diminished, to 1, and then 5-7 of 5-7, a flat 5, which is the E7, taking me to A minor 7, to D7, to G7, which is a little turnaround, which is 1-7, 5-7 of 2, to 5-7 of 5, to 5. It's, after a while, just a game of numbers, and it really, you shouldn't be burdened or get so caught up in it. But here's this one, number 4. 2, 3, 4. So that's that one. Last but not least, number 5, and I wrote on the bottom, to be continued, because it's a never-ending thing. So here I use diatonic setup, secondary dominance, targeting turnarounds. And what's a turnaround? Just one chord taking to another chord to another that brings you back to where you started. And additional tension. So I put 13s on chords and 9s on chords. And so here, I'll just run this one through real quick. I'm sure, for the most part, many of you have played this more expanded version of the blues. But here it is. So it's still the blues. It still targets the areas that it targets. It gives you more things. So to recap, we messed with the simple guide tone lines of a blues. And from there, we looked at the 2-5 guide tone line. And the fact that they can be married together as one overall sound. And then how we can target other chords in a blues. Now, how to practice this. If you've not used to targeting the guide tone lines and you're still working in the simple box of a minor pentatonic and finding notes that work throughout the whole blues, then my suggestion would be take a looper and just record 1 to 4. Very simply 1 to 4, and practice going. Here's 4. Back to 1. And that's it. Over and over. Slow. Deliberate. Get the sound in your ears. Believe me, I did it that slow. I probably did it slower. To assure myself that I was going with what my ears were dictating. So you can't make use of them if you don't feed it to your ear. Can you play an example of using F major guide tone lines over G7 a la West? Sure, that's just pretty much an F major 7 guide tone line. Is nothing more than D minor 9, right? So your F major 7 guide tone line, if you choose to accept it, okay, for the most part, is just an E and an A natural. So you're playing a D minor 9, okay? So here it is if I want to do a la West over a G7. And then I go to the 4 chord. I could use G minor. Back to F major 7. Now, what's my 5 chord? A minor. My 4 chord, G minor. My 1 chord, D minor. And so what it really comes off sounding like is my 1 chord is going to sound like a D minor 9. My 4 chord is going to sound like a G minor 7 or a G minor 9. My 5 chord is going to sound like an A minor 9. Okay, so what that does, and this I can elaborate more on this, but it's the extended chord tones. I'll do it real quick. The extended chord tones of an F major 7. If you go F, A, C, E, G, B natural, D, it's C major 7, 9, sharp 11, and 13. So if you see, eventually, you have a G7 there. You see it? You have a G7. So it's basically 2-5. You're calling it F major 7, which is just another way of saying a D minor 9. Okay? And there's your G7. So again, I'm probably in your way and you can't see me. I'm going to superimpose my other. Yeah, you got my other camera, so you won't miss my hands. Let's go back. Okay, so here we go again. Here's the extended arpeggio. So here's the one for G7, which would be B flat major 7 or G minor. And if you see, is B flat. Now you want to call it G minor? Or you want to call it B flat major 7? You want to call it C7? Give it a name. It don't matter. It's back to those 4 chords are all 1 chord, which we discussed last week. All right. So if this is C7, here's flat 7. Here's 9. Here's 11. Here's 13. Here's the root of C7. Here's the third of C7, and here's the 5th. So Wes used to go. George does it all the time. That's why a C7 chord and a G minor 6 are the same chord. A B flat major 7 chord is the same chord. An E minor 7 flat 5 is the same chord. We discussed that last week. If you go back to the tape last week or to remind yourself. So that's what he did. So anyway, I hope that answers the question, Mr. Rosmel. Let me know. Let me know if that worked for you. We're going to do more of that. I might as well tell you now as well. I'm going to come on live and do a music theory course. It's the stuff I've been teaching forever, but it's going to start with the construction of major scales, the construction of the pentatonic scales, the diatonic system, how it's a 2-system world. Dia meaning 2, and it being, if you marry subdominant and dominant, it's the 1 sound movement and the tonic sound, which is restful. And we'll build from there secondary dominance, and I'll take you all the way to, advanced reharmonizations and playing over stuff. So I'll let everybody know it, and I'll mark it down as a theory for guitar players to help everybody tie in the fingerboard.
Okay.
Yeah.
I found this on the web.
I don't know why that kicked on, but because it's important for us to realize as guitar players that we need to view the instrument, the guitar, like a piano player does. They don't play picture books. If you understand harmony, understand how to create and construct chords, then you don't need to get the chord chemistry book. So if you join me on that, I'm sure it's going to, for my Berkeley friends, it's going to be redundant, and you've been through it, but I kind of tie it together. Real simply, you build a scale, and it's the same pattern for a major scale, and the intervallic relationships, and looking at the guitar primarily as 6 separate keyboards tuned in fourths except for a third, and understanding that. So this way you know every note on the guitar, and it's not like you're cool here and you're not cool here, and a quote I always reiterate for myself is, you don't grow in a comfortable environment. So if you find you can play the blues real good in B flat on the 6th fret, then get out of that area and start to feel comfortable somewhere else. Eventually you'll devour the whole neck, and you won't be limited to any one area. Anyway, back to the blues thing I did before, adding the elaborate chord changes, guide tone lines that we discussed. Anything else? Keep in mind what we discussed with the West thing and playing the major 7 chord. It's all the same sound. It's just upper structures of a straight C7 chord. C7 and G minor 6, same animal. E flat minor 7 flat 5 here. Look. I will play what Rosmel mentioned. Here's G7. Here's 4. Now look what I did there. I went E flat minor 7 flat 5, E minor 7 flat 5. And then here's an F. I'm going to go chromatic to the 3rd. Chromatic down to the flat 7. Back to 1, which is G7. And here's 5, which I'm going to play as A minor 7 D7. I'll make it augmented. Back to 1. 4. Back to 1. 5. I went 5 7 to 2. And that time I played A flat 7, which takes me back to there. Okay. Anyway, this is it. Everything is, if you can play a chord in a chord progression, and you can with conviction play a melody on that chord that is kind of based in, it has to be based in that chord, then it works. It'll work. If you could do this, okay? I just did that. Here's 1. Back to 1. You can hear it. That's what I outlined. 1. 1. 5. No matter where I am, I'm not lost. I'm on the 1 chord. I'm on the 5 chord. You're just not lost. You're just not lost. Because it's no different. It's just if I'm playing on this and then I'm playing on this, if you can comp that behind me, then I should be able to play on it. And even if you don't comp it behind me, even if you just go like this, but I'm in my head hearing this, right? I can play on it. In fact, let me go back to that crazy loop, I'm going to do a new loop. Let's do a new loop. All right. I'm gonna not play anything but a G13 chord. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now I just in my head did this. You can do it because it doesn't matter if the band does it with you. In fact, if they do it with you, it doesn't sound like you're adding that much hair on anything. You know. So, any more questions about this stuff, about the guide tone lines that help you target things without sounding like you're playing arpeggios? They worked for me. They help my ear get through chord changes and play through chord changes melodically, and they kind of kept me in check, because if I don't hear a major third on a chord, then I really can't play a flat 3 as a melodic note if I don't know where the major third is, you know. So if I'm playing, I've introduced that sound. Mi, do, me, da, 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 ba, ba, da, 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 ba, ba, da, 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 5. I mean, it's playing it is fun, you know. It's like playing a game of chess with yourself. Anyway, those are the things I wanted to cover today. I hope they help you all move up the ladder a little bit. Showing them to everybody helps me move up the ladder for sure. I think you're all subscribed, you know. Pass the word on. If you have anybody that wants to jump in on those theory lessons, I'll let everybody know. I'm going to do probably like an hour and cover, I have about 8 phases that cover everything from the origins of a major scale all the way up to secondary dominance and substitutions and diminished chords and what else? There's a lot. There's a lot of stuff. So I'll start at square one and help everybody connect the dots in the way, my gray matter connected the dots. So anyway, about the PRS, I had an ES350, and I my days of playing a big arch top guitar, 17-inch guitar, kind of over. I mean, I used to, my Berkeley days, I was very fortunate to have a beautiful D'Angelico XL, which during the lean years I sold. And I made it myself ever since. And then I've lived my life with L5s and Super 400s. And then I found this beautiful 1952 ES350. It sounded great, great guitar. And I sat here going, am I ever going to take it to a gig? And I'm at that point now where if I'm not going to use it, then move it. So if you look behind me, let me get rid of these things. You can see that I have, I have some gear, not much left. The one flat top that's sitting there facing us is not mine. That's my wife's old Yami. The ones on the rack, I have and that's her bass. The ones on the rack are a 1968 Fender Tele. I've had that forever, probably dating back to the Berkeley days. The next over is a Mark Campolone that's I called a RD10, which because it's modeled after a GB10. but it's not plywood, it's solid wood. I've had that forever. Great sounding guitar. Totally hollow with solid woods. The next over is a 87 ES 335. Then there's a flat top that was built by a friend for me. First time in my whole life anybody gave me a guitar. I've never got an endorsement on the guitar. I've had some string endorsements, but never a guitar. He made that for me for one of my birthdays. He's a very eccentric character that, very smart man, and he just decides one day he's going to build guitars, and he reads all about it, and he built a bunch that were really nice, and he tap tuned it, and he gave me the frequencies to every bracing, and very, very, kind of guy that's brain's always spinning. Ryan McKinney. And then the other is an awesome nylon string guitar made by Kenny Hill, which is a great guitar. It has a double top, which is an old way of constructing a nylon string. It's a spruce top with a honeycomb in the middle, and then a cedar, and it's very, very thin, but it sounds. The guitar is unbelievable. It sounds like it's it's electrified, although it is electrified, but acoustically it's a cannon. And then this PRS, which when I took the 350 and I gave it to my buddy Rudy, Rudy Penza, who also they make great guitars as well, and he had this. Someone had bought it, and I guess owed him some money and traded it in, and it's not old. It's a 2020. It has a piezo in it. It has, you can blend the piezo if you so desire, which I think is that, if I blend it. Yep. Or taking it out completely, or totally by itself. And it has coil taps. So, if you want to do your telly thing, do your Jerry Reed. Always been a big fan of Jerry Reed. Anyway, that's what this is about. I only own 2 amps. One is the amp made by a gentleman named Billy Penn, only 18 watts, and the other's a little Fender Super Champ. That's it. My days of carrying big amps are over. That's pretty much all I own. I have one acoustic amp made by Godin that I plug the nylon string when needed, but for the most part, I'm pretty much a electric guitar player. So, is there any more questions, guys? Next week, next week, I'll find something we can talk about. I'll dig something up, but keep your ears open for the theory thing. Let me see what I might discuss next week. I made a let's see. Okay, we did guide tone lines for the blues. We did guide tone lines for 2 5s. Next week maybe we'll talk about 3-note voicings. A lot of people see me do them. I think I demonstrated this last week, just to go back to guide tone lines. Nick Goodrick the story about Mick Goodrick when I wanted to know how to play bass lines, and he just said to me, I was there at my lesson, and Mick is like Mr. Zen, and he just goes guy tone lines, and then that was it. That's all he said to me, and I was like, really, guy tone lines? Okay, whatever that means. How does that have to do with bass lines? So I went home and kind of brainstormed with myself, and I'm like, what is he talking about with guy tone lines? So I took a song called Blues for Alice, and it's a blues, but it's not a blues. It's a Charlie Parker tune. There's a lot of 2/5s in it. And I worked it up, and here's the basic changes. 2/5 City. Okay. So I said, all right, what are the guide tone lines to that? So I went, okay. So you can hear the whole song just by those guide tone lines. So my next thought was, well, what does a bass player play for the most part? Other than walking, he plays roots and fifths, right? So I said, all right, so I'll make my thumb do roots and fifths. That's what I came up with, and that's what I showed up with for my lesson. I probably didn't do it that slick, or even if you consider that slick. But anyway, that was my introduction to guide tone lines in the early days, and the very early days. And I don't know if Andrea was there at Berkeley when the likes of John LaPorta was there, a really fine teacher and a really fine musician. I mean, I was fortunate to have him and Herb Pomeroy and Ted Pease and Mark French, and of course Bill Levitt, and the earlier mentioned Mick Goodrick, and then Charlie Banakis, and later Dennis Sandoli in Philly. But that was a really very smoking time to be there with the likes of walking the hallways with with people like bass, Jeff Berlin, bass player, George Mraz, guitar players, John Schofield, Mike Stern, Emily Remler, Chuck Loeb, Richie Hart, Jamie Glazer. Man, it's like the who's who, and we're all working hard to play over the blues and play over real changes. And they had some awesome piano players, Luciano Salvatore, Kenny Werner, Gil Goldstein. It was a great time to be there. 1970, I was a student from 1970 to 74, and then I was a teacher there till 77. But that was an awesome time to be there. So, and John LaPorta was one of the first teachers for melody and improvisation, and he was the one that had everybody work on their pentatonic scales, and the origin of the pentatonic scale coming from the major scale and removing the two active tones, which is the fourth and the seventh, which now you have great targeted notes. It's an arpeggio, but you don't sound like you're running an arpeggio. And that was his thing. And then he introduced the guide tone lines on the blues as I presented. And that was a good link and a good thing to awaken your ear. So, I hope for the most part that helps people play on the change, make the move, and start to feed their ear to where your ear is your best judge. If you don't feel that if you played on the change or you played a melody that was through the change, and you either chase the change by, it's different. You can chase a change. You can play over a change, or you can play through the change. And to me, I think the best way is to play through the change, so that you're on a note and you know where it's going to go for the next chord change or where it might stay. It doesn't necessarily have to move, but your ear is your best judge. So when I sit and play, I know right away if I'm not connected, my hand's not connected to my ears, and certainly not connected. And if it's not connected to my ears, then it's not connected to my soul. So my biggest thing is to do it slow, to do it real slow, really, really exaggerated, and in the beginning it's deliberate. It's just like driving a car. If any of you have driven a stick car, or even a non-stick car, when you see that sign that's in red with 4 letters on it and one it starts with an S, when you first had your driver's test, you did that very deliberately. You stopped, and you saw that stop sign from like a block away, and you would nervous wreck to make sure you stopped properly, and you took off in time, and you were very concerned with who was behind you and who you were tying up, all that stuff. Well, that's what it takes, or at least that's what it took for me to do it slow. This is not brain surgery, but I'm not a brain surgeon. I'm not a Rhodes Scholar. I joke with everybody and say, well, I got 200 points on my SATs. I'm sure I did a little better than that, but it's not. It's just being patient, and I'm not the most patient man. You can ask my wife. I'm not, and I'm not, and I'm my worst critic, and I think we all are. I think once you you pursue things as an art, then you peel back the onion every day. You look in the mirror and say, okay, how much better can I get today than I was yesterday? And put yourself in an uncomfortable environment. That's what made Charlie Parker. He was kicked off the bandstand. George Benson was fired from his first gig with Jack McDuff. Michael Jordan was cut from his high school basketball team. So that's always been my philosophy. You don't grow in a comfortable environment. There's always a learning curve to every day that you get up. So I hope this all helped everybody. Spread the word, get more people. If you have any friends that want to jump in here, I'm overjoyed to pass the information on, and I hope it raises you all one notch up the ladder, because it certainly does for me. Any other questions before we call it a day? And we'll do 3-note voicings next Thursday. And who knows? We might find some other stuff. 3-note voicings, the marriage of a 2/5, the gravitational pull of the diatonic system, secondary dominance. We'll mess with all that stuff. If we're good, it's always a pleasure, guys. Hey, Andrea, it's a pleasure to see you here. I see your stuff all the time, and it's a joy to watch you pass on your music. Mr. Rosmel, it's always a pleasure to see you or speak with you, and keep swinging. Clive, any questions? There's ways to get me. I just was online with GoDaddy. I'm redoing my website because my old website wouldn't allow me to put any links to YouTube. And I had my old email address, which I still have. And if anybody wants to reach me as far as a private lesson on Zoom, feel free. You can reach me, and I'm going to give out my personal email right now. So that's probably the best way to get me. And it's russjazz52, at AOL.com. I'm probably the only person left on AOL. It's Russ, RUSSJAZZ 52, giving away my year of birth, at AOL.com. If you want a one-on-one on this, and you think that it would be helpful for me to coach you through some stuff, I'll be happy to do that. I learn from everybody. And like George Benson said, if you don't want me to steal it, don't play it in front of me. I have the same slogan. I get lost on YouTube with everybody, watching my buddy Jeff and his pals, and my former student Barry Green, and Rick Piatto's out there. There's a lot of great people on YouTube, as well as watching George and the Breeze and Lounge, which is there with Jody Fisher. There's a lot of great stuff happening. So without further ado, guys, I'm not going to keep any longer. I think we've been doing this for God, I lost track here. Probably been doing it for at least an hour or so. Is there any last questions or anything else I can help you with? Get those minor 6 pentatonic scales under your fingers, and then go from 1 to 4, then go from 5 to 1. Isolate the bars themselves, and the transitions, and just be patient and work them through the 5 fingerings. So if you're in this position and you're playing a G7 chord, and here's 4. All right, so you do 1 to 4. Now you do it here. 4. Okay, then here's 1 again. I'm in G7, going G7 to C7. So here's G7 to C7. Here's C7. Here's G7. C7. G7. C7. Then do the same thing, except this time go D7 back to G7, and then put it together. Okay, and then you have to excuse me if I think I put a few chromaticisms in there. We'll discuss indirect and direct resolutions and what people call enclosures, which is kind of just another way of saying an indirect resolution. So, and then how to harmonize those resolutions with the dominant approach. So. Guys, I think I've, taken up enough of your time. If there's no other questions, just give me a thumbs up that everybody's good. And I'll hopefully catch you all next Thursday, same time, same place, pretty much. And we'll continue on with some other stuff. And if you all are gracious enough to join me, if you have any questions, throw them at me. And I'm sure I'll be able to answer, to at least give you some insight on whatever that could be. So, shoot me a thumbs up, and I will catch you all on the flip side next Thursday. And, it'll be a different day that I'll do that theory class. I'll probably pick a different night or a different morning, or maybe a Saturday morning or something. So, anyway. I guess the dogs are giving me their critique. Be well, stay safe, enjoy your weekend. All right, guys, take care.